Hey everyone. So what we're going to do today is we are going to now up our knowledge of our roots, axis of symmetry, and vertex. And how we're going to do that is by exploring how to find them algebraically. We've been using a calculator and a table and a graph, but now we're going to do it without any of those. So now we have these formulas and shortcuts to do it, but you have to memorize how to get there, okay? So first things first, I just want to look at what the different types of quadratics look like. So don't forget your quadratic in standard form, which is what we're going to be using for today, is ax squared plus bx plus c, which we've been using all the time. But a quadratic in vertex form looks like that, and we're going to explore that a little bit on in 2 days. And then the quadratic in intercept form or root form, which we sometimes now call factored form, looks like this. And these are all different ways to explore and write quadratics. And there's other, and we use these to interpret and analyze these quadratics. So what we're going to look at today is finding your roots. Your roots are really just your solutions. They're where the graph crosses the x-axis. And in order to find those, we're going to go back to solving quadratics, which is set equal to 0, factor solve. Or you can use the quadratic formula. The axis of symmetry, just to remind you, is that line that cuts through the vertex. Now, before we use the vertex to find our axis of symmetry, but today we're going to use a formula to find our axis of symmetry and then use that to find our vertex. Now, there's one thing that a lot of you are having a hard time with. Now, if the vertex is at the bottom of a quadratic, it's considered a minimum. And that is made by the a being a positive number. Now, if a quadratic has a negative a, it's upside down. It flips upside down and has a maximum. These are very important details that you should be able to see and know when you're looking at a quadratic, whether or not it opens upwards, opens downward, or has a maximum or minimum, just by looking at it. Okay, so this is something I need you guys to memorize as well. So let's try one together. So this one says, find the roots of this quadratic, y equals x squared minus 6x minus 16. So again, you're going to set equal to 0, factor solve. Now, setting equals 0 means I'm going to replace the y with 0. And I'm going to rewrite my equation, and then I'm going to factor it. Now, if you prefer, you could put the equals 0 over there. It doesn't matter. I prefer it on the right-hand side too, but just know you're taking out that y and you're going to now factor it. So now you're trying to find your factors of negative 16 that give you a negative 6. So I know they have to be opposite, so I'm going to do 1, negative 1, 16, negative 2, 8, negative 4, 4, and then the opposites are 1, negative 16, 2, negative 8, and 4, negative 4. So which give me my negative 6? That would be your 2 and 8. So we're going to break it up. We get x squared plus 2x minus 8x minus 16 equals 0. Group it. Factor out your GCF, which is x for this one. Get x plus 2. Your GCF here is negative 8. So you bring out your negative 8. You get x plus 2 equals 0. Therefore, your factors are x minus 8 and x plus 2 equals 0. And then our next step is to tee it off and find your solutions. And now these are solutions. These are actually the places where our quadratic crosses the x-axis. So we tee it off. We have x plus 2, x minus 8 equals 0. And you have x plus 2 equals 0, x minus 8 equals 0. Therefore, x equals negative 2 and x equals positive 8. Okay. Now, if you wanted, you can go to your calculator. You could plug that quadratic in. It was x squared minus 6x minus 16. And if you graph it, you should see that the quadratic does crosses over at that point at negative 2 and over there at positive 8. Or you can also go into your table and notice 8 is a 0 and so is negative 2. So those are your solutions, your roots, or your zeros. So these are all three things you need to know. So you can use your calculator, but this is a really important skill to be able to use your algebraic method. All right, so pause the video, make sure you get this down. Now on to the next part. It says find the axis of symmetry. Now this has to be memorized, this formula. The axis of symmetry formula is just a little piece of the quadratic, which is x equals negative b over 2a. So you find your a, you find your b. Your a is the number in front of x squared, which is positive 1. Your b is the number in front of x. We don't need c for this one, which is negative 6. And now we write our skeleton out, negative b over 2a, and plug it in. The b goes on top, negative 6. The a goes on bottom. So then in your calculator, you're going to do net alpha y equals, sorry. Some of you are going to be able to do this in your head, which is fine, but we're going to do alpha y equals negative parenthesis negative 6. And then you're going to do 2 parenthesis 1, enter, and you should get 3. So that means x is equal to 3. So what that means is that your vertex, your axis of symmetry, it crosses through at 1, 2, 3. X equals 3. That's what the axis of symmetry is. It's a line. This is an equation of a line. So please pause this down and make sure you get all the information. And now we're going to move on to finding the vertex. Now we're going to be using this number for the next one. So now they want us to find the vertex. Now remember, your vertex is a point. It's made up of an x and a y. Now we already have the x. We found it in the last problem. It's the x for the axis of symmetry. So now what we do is we plug it into the equation to get your y. So you keep your y. You replace all the x's with 3 because that's what our vertex, that's what our axis of symmetry is. And that axis of symmetry crosses right through that vertex. So now I plug it in, and then I'm just going to replace all, just type it in my calculator. Parenthesis 3, close, squared. Minus 6, parenthesis 3, close. Minus 16, press enter, and you get negative 25. So that means y is equal to negative 25. So your vertex is 3, negative 25. Now, just for ha-has, is this a maximum or minimum? Well, we know since that x squared has a positive number for a, this is considered a minimum. And you can also tell in your calculator, you might as well check it. If you go back here, go to your table, you should be able to see that we did get the right vertex. It's right here. It's 3, negative 25, but we did it without the calculator. Well, we did math, but just know that you can do it. You can find it in your calculator, and you can also do it algebraically. And if you graph it, you should notice that it's going down and then up. So that is clearly hitting a minimum. Okay? So these are just all the little things I want you guys to be able to do in order to be successful next year in geometry and then in Algebra 2. So pause the video, make sure you get this down. So what you're going to do is just complete the next 2 practice problems on your own. Check your answers with an answer key that I provide on the Google Classroom. If you get any wrong, just watch the second video where I guide you through it again. Last, you're going to need to complete the Delta Math assignment on finding the axis of symmetry and the vertex algebraically. I think I only gave you like 4 problems, maybe 6, but please make sure you get that done. And just remember, you could do your work on any sort of paper,